Cross my leg like this or like this.
Whatever you like.
Okay. What are we talking about today?
I'll let you pick a topic today.
I think we should talk about how we erase old patterns, how we kill our old versions of ourselves in order to make space for new evolutions within ourselves, essentially, whether psychologically or spiritually.
Yeah, I like that. So I like the topic of we can put it as like old self versus a new self,
Mm,
like transformation, right?
exactly,
Yeah,
exactly. It's the age old kind of topic of healing and growth.
shedding.
We're always looking at who we are currently in the present, all the various patterns which constitute our being, and in order to grow, there has to be a kind of judgment on our current patterns as to which patterns are serving us. That is, they're aiding us in our psychological and spiritual development, and which patterns are holding us back, which patterns are karmic, as people would say, which
Yes.
patterns keep us in dense, heavy frequencies of dissatisfaction, craving, depression, anxiety, and that judgment, I think, is a element I want to zoom in on because um, I think we need to cultivate that kind of judgment in order to tell whether to, something is good or bad for us. Because sometimes we can do bad things unconsciously, you know.
Yes, yes. The unconscious patterns of your mind. Until the unconscious hasn't been brought to the light, you will keep following the same cycle. I want to shed light on generational cycle breaking and ancestral karma because some qualities, it's not that it is predominant in us, but we carry that forward through ancestors, and it's in our soul to clear that. So I feel like we should talk a bit about the spiritual aspect of it and also the material aspect of
Mm,
shedding of the self. Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
So, what for you is the most important first step in clearing ancestral trauma and karma?
For me, that would be identifying that you have ancestors that have carried forward this karma. So if you don't have a connection to your ancestors, this will be very difficult to clear because at first you need a connection with them in order for them to guide you and help you clear that. So the way I clear mine is I observe my familial patterns or certain patterns my family or my generations carry that I may not really look up to, and I try to do things in my own way, even though that is against the grain. So I'm not really afraid in going against the grain and breaking the cycle and doing things in a way that feels right for me because I'm breaking off the cycle and starting my own cycle and clearing the karma that has been going on for years, really. Yeah,
Mm,
but I want to know how your take is on ancestral karma and
yeah,
energy baggage.
yeah. I feel that um, in comparison to perhaps more um, ancient ways of being, like they would often have a deep remembrance and reverence for one's ancestors. Most people today, we would struggle to name who our great 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 grandparents
Yeah,
are,
yeah.
and I think that is something to really think about and contemplate. Why are we so dissociated from the past?
Hmm.
Why do we dissociate from those sort of family networks of support and heritage? Why do we consider ourselves as
Alone.
islands
Yeah.
in the now, detached from the past and moving towards some um, vague future? I think we have to remember the past and integrate the past. Otherwise, we will continue to make the same mistakes.
Mistakes. Yes.
We'll be stuck in these loops of behavior, and we'll wonder why is this happening again? Why is this happening again? Because we haven't taken an honest and authentic look at what has happened in the past and given the time and the effort to release that. Um, I personally, I haven't done deep work with my ancestors. Um, I've done deep work with, my own personal lifetime, my own early childhood, and those sorts of elements. Um, I think I still have more work to do with regards to tapping into those more intergenerational patterns, which are perhaps still
Exist.
influencing my being. So I'm very much sort of a novice looking ahead at this whole topic, but I intuitively I have an intuitive grasp of how the patterns that animate me right now are strongly a product of what has come before me. My
Hmm.
parents, my parents' parents, my parents' parents' parents. That's just the way of life. That's how reproduction operates, and we can ignore it. People feel it's like genetic fatalism to look at your parents and be like, oh, like I don't want to be the same as my parents, but like we have to acknowledge that we do inherit that genetic material
Yeah.
somehow, and it isn't gonna that isn't a death sentence. It isn't like meaning that you're going to be your behavior is set in stone this way.
No,
We
no.
all have free will, and we all have the freedom to choose our environment, and our environment will activate different aspects of our
Being.
genome anyway. So, but um, but yeah, what does it mean to you um, beyond this, what, beyond the process of first clearing
Hmm.
ancestral trauma? Um, how does it feel for you from your experience? What is the difference in your experience before and
Yeah,
after?
after.
Yeah.
So I've worked quite heavily with intergenerational ancestral trauma clearing.
Mm,
I've done a lot of rituals. I've sat with myself. I've called upon the ancestors. I have tried to go very, very deep, beyond the subconscious on a spiritual level, where I see patterns that my generation has been carrying. Um, and when I sit with those, it's revealed to me in a very obvious manner that okay, like you have a problem of not being out there because you're afraid of what people would say or what people would think, but that's not mine. That was
mm,
a fear that my ancestors carried from years and years and years ago, and I somewhat have strains of that fear. But because I am aware, as generational curse breakers, people like us, we are aware that there is something different, and we are also known as the black sheep. Commonly, like you might be the most different member of your family, and that allows you to sort of really look at the patterns that show up around you. And once you do that, for me, I felt like before I was burdened by it, I was consumed by the same patterns that my ancestors carried, the same flaws that they carried, and I was a victim to that aspect. And the second I got aware, I realized that, oh, I'm not a victim. There is free will here, and I can change that.
mm,
Once I identified it, I worked towards healing that and sitting with myself and making choices that reflect the higher path every single day. It is not a clearing that will just go away with a ritual. It's a conscious choice that one has to keep making over long periods of time until it's a habit, and then you are choosing a different path.
mm,
So after all of that, I felt a difference in my being. I felt more authentic to all that I was and all that I am now. And I feel like a different person, not weighed down by my
mm.
past or the ancestors. And I feel brand new, like there's no weight on my shoulders.
Yeah, and I guess sort of mindfulness is an activity that always has to be done and repeated and cultivated. It's not something you don't
A candle trick isn't going to do it.
exactly. It's not something that you just do for 5 minutes. You sit
No,
down on a mat, do whatever ritual, and then you think, oh, the work's done. No, the
no.
whole point of it is for it to initiate a shift in your awareness that is permanent and unchanging. You don't want to temporarily release trauma and
No.
then have it creep back into your experience.
Yeah.
That is why awareness must be cultivated and reinforced
Yes.
each moment. Um, because we can often, on the spiritual kind of journey, um, we can clear something, and then we have that euphoric period of
Mm-hmm.
clearing something,
Mm-hmm.
and then that can instill a sense of complacency, which causes you to fall back into old patterns
Yes.
or old belief structures, seemingly unconsciously. That's why you have to remain vigilant and aware of yourself and your
Surrounding.
reactions to things, your
Yes.
surroundings, your perceptions.
Mm-hmm.
What does your mind have a tendency to go towards? What does your attention have a tendency to orient towards? These are all simple but deeply important and deeply intimate things that people have to consider,
Mm-hmm.
I think. And yeah, and ancestral trauma, the trauma that we carry from our parents. Our parents don't
Mm-hmm.
consciously often
No.
put trauma on us, but it's a natural inheritance. They give us a lot of positive things, a lot of positive
Yes.
values,
Yes.
positive meaning systems, but they can unconsciously, um, by the nature of who they are, if they haven't done completely cleared all the work,
No.
um, they will often um, project such beliefs onto their kids, and their kids have to recognize, okay, these sorts of beliefs that I have, these habits that I have, are they truly authentically mine, or are
Yeah.
they simply things that I've just been conditioned with? A lot of kids' beliefs are not theirs, so they're the
They are
beliefs of,
adopted.
yeah, they're adopted by their parents or their peer groups or their culture that they're brought
Yes.
up in.
Yes.
Um, it takes a very courageous kind
Person.
of independence to really sit with yourself and to truly analyze, okay, what beliefs are authentically mine and what beliefs are these kind of this residue
Yeah.
of the various interactions and conditioning events that I've been um, exposed to, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I like that. Also, I feel like the integral part of the process would be identification. Until you are not aware of what these patterns are or what they look like, there is no entry point. So you have to really sit down with yourself and question yourself, like, if this is not mine, where is this coming from? And do I want to consciously carry it with me? It's like baggage. If this baggage isn't yours, why are you traveling with it? Because you're the one that's living with yourself. Your ancestors are your ancestors, but
Mm,
you're in your body. So
mm,
it is truly a conscious choice to leave that behind. Many people comply and carry it along because they think they're doing themselves a favor by just, tagging along.
mm,
But you will realize that once that weight is off your shoulders, once you drop everything that isn't yours, all the energy, all the patterns, all the beliefs, all the trauma that was imposed on you, but you don't have to carry it anymore. People don't know that they have a choice, is what I notice in my current day and time. People forget that there is free will. They feel like they are complying to carrying that, but there is always a choice to let that go. Letting go is a choice.
yeah.
Letting go is always a choice, and to emerge into a new self, the first step has to let go of your old self. You need a clear space to emerge into who you are.
Mm,
Authenticity requires clearing and space of all that is not authentic to you.
mm, that's true.
Yes.
And yeah, I feel that for our next episode, we should zoom in on this process of letting go, this process of truly discovering one's agency
Yes.
and their capacity to be a sovereign
Being.
co-creator of reality. Because I see often people feel that they are just a victim of circumstance. They have this victim mentality,
Mentality.
which pushes them down, which really narrows their options for engagement with the world. They just think, oh, reality is just going to be this kind of way.
Yes.
Reality is just going to throw this shit at me,
Yeah.
and I can't do anything with it. I just
Yeah.
have to surrender to it.
Yeah.
But there is a flip point. Um, there is a wisdom in surrendering to reality as it is, but there is also a step that we can take as conscious entities to realize our consciousness, to realize that we are not a we are not just a victim to the forces of nature. We ourselves can be a force of nature. We can push against the currents of the wave. We can
Yes.
also create our own waves. We can change everything. The energy that's involved in contracting a muscle, that is you. That is what you can do. And the energy of speech, the energy of movement. These are all things that you have by virtue of being a organism that is filled with the vital force of life. And when you seriously see the mystique and the miracle and the awe of that in and of itself, um, you are on the path to realizing your divinity, essentially. And when you realize your divinity, when you realize you're an aspect of the cosmic play, you're an aspect of God. Um, all these victim mentalities, all these 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 meaning systems, which really starve you of meaning because they push you down and be like, "Oh, you are nothing." They all hold grasp over you. They cease to be really meaningful because you start seeing just the extraordinary in the ordinary, you know.
Yeah.
And with that knowledge, with that not it's not a book knowledge, it's a directly experienced knowledge that you are that, as
Yes.
they would say in the Vita Vedanta, you are that, and no one can tell you what you are.
Yes.
Um, no one can reduce you. No one can compress your being.
No.
Um, you have the freedom to choose.
Yes.
And
Always.
I think people, as soon as people wake up to their freedom, that they do not have to be a slave to control systems. When humanity wakens up to that, because currently it is obvious there are many control systems that are at play. Um, People are poisoned by many factors of their
Yes.
environment because there is often money in there.
Yes.
When people wake up to such systems of oppression, um, they will demand freedom. It's a deep urge within us to demand freedom and respect and dignity, I feel.
Yes.
But that's a potent way to end it there. But
Yeah.
I think we'll leave that there
Yeah.
and say goodbye to the audience.
Of course. Goodbye.
Goodbye. There we go.